Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you for joining us for part two of our three-part webinar series, Writing and Righting the Wrongs in Archival Description. Happy to have you today. Last week was a really great session, so I hope you were able to join us. If you missed last week's, you can find the recording on the Conservation Connection website. We'll have all those links for you at the end of today's webinar. My name is Kathy Varda. I am the Director of Conservation Connection, a program at the Connecticut State Library, and the program arm for the Connecticut State Historical Records Advisory Board. I'd like to introduce Lizette Pelletier, the Connecticut State Archivist, to tell you a little bit about SHRAB.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you very much for signing up for this webinar series. The Connecticut State Historical Records Advisory Board, or otherwise known as Connecticut SHRAB, represents record creators, records managers, users, and repositories that hold historical records. The National Historic Publications and Records Commission, NHPRC, is the funding arm of the National Archives and Records Administration, and it created the SHRABs during the United States Bicentennial celebration as part of a national effort to save and make accessible historical records that upon which the rights of the people depend in a democracy, as well as those necessary for the study and appreciation of American history, quoting from the federal regulation that established the NHPRC. NHPRC awards grants for publication records projects within the states and federal territories. The records projects help to identify and preserve archival records found in private and public institutions. And members of the SHRAB assist NHPRC by serving as peer reviewers to evaluate grant applications. And NHPRC also uses the board's evaluations in its recommendations to the commission members, that's the staff, I should say, regarding grant applications. We also, well, first of all, the governor appoints the members of the board, and at least half of those appointed to the board must be practicing archivists. The only other qualification on being on the board is that the member cared deeply about the preservation of Connecticut's historical records. We are apolitical. Politics plays no role in the recommendations on who serves on the board, and we serve three-year terms. And I, as state archivist, is the state historical records coordinator, and I am the chairperson. So if you'd like more information on the board, you can check out the State Library webpage, and there's a description about more of our work and who sits on our board. So I will turn it back over to Kathy.
Thank you, Lizette. I'd love to introduce you all to our speaker for today. Amy Hietala is the project archivist and manager for the American Revolution Papers Digitization Project at the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History in Hartford. She has an MS in Library Science with a concentration in Archives Management from Simmons College, School of Library and Information Science, and is a certified archivist. Amy was previously the research librarian at Old Sturbridge Village and the librarian archivist at the Wood Memorial Library and Museum. And I'm going to give her credit for helping me come up with the name for this webinar series. So I will now turn it over to Amy. Thank you, everybody. Please hold all your questions to the end, and please put them into the chat with a question mark in the beginning so we can make sure to locate it and share your questions at the end of Amy's presentation.
Great. Well, thank you. I am going to get my screen shared. Hopefully everyone can see the slides here. Oh, I got to go back one slide. So thank you so much, Kathy, for your nice introduction. I feel a little bit intimidated to be counted among all of the other people that are doing this series. So this is our Righting the Wrongs and Archival Description, and this session number 2 is addressing and updating outdated language and archival descriptions.
Amy, can I
Yes.
interrupt a minute? We're seeing the speaker part of the slides.
You are, okay.
Was fine, and then it switched.
Interesting. It is not letting me swap. Is that better?
Yes.
There you
It
go.
is. Okay, that means I have no notes. Good thing I have some printed out. So, I'm currently the project archivist and manager at the Connecticut Museum of Culture and History. We are located in Hartford and will be celebrating 200 years in 2025. We are formally named the Connecticut Historical Society, and in June 2023, the name was changed to reflect the organization's mission to explore the rich history of Connecticut and its impact on the nation and the world today. So, as Kathy mentioned, our American Revolution Papers digitization project, one of the hardest titles to say, is a congressionally directed grant through the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, NHPRC, to process, digitize, and provide access to papers in the museum collection relating to the American Revolution. We are currently using Connecticut Digital Archives for access and preservation of our images, Connecticut Archives Online for our finding aids, and we are using our library resources, OCLC and Bibliovation. So in connection with our American 250 program, one focus of this project is to identify previously unknown names and stories. We are trying to rehumanize formerly enslaved and untraced people. In doing so, myself and my wonderful colleagues, Andrea Slater and Sierra Dixon, have been meeting regularly to formulate a workflow and tracking process for reparative description. Andrea and Sierra were already in the process of doing the tracking and flagging problematic language, but as you can imagine, that is a very daunting task and very difficult to do when you are doing all of your everyday work. So we began to use the American Revolution project, AMREV as we like to shorten it to, as a pilot to identify the workflow that is being incorporated, to identify the workflow, and that is being incorporated into processing other collections. So a lot of today's presentation is focusing on the topics that I encounter most in this project, which is slavery, people of color, and indigenous peoples. So on to why we are here. Here we go. As said last week, the definition of reparative description is the remediation of practices or data that exclude, silence, harm, or mischaracterize marginalized people in the data created or used by archivists to identify or characterize archival resources. So what does that mean? Essentially, many libraries, archives, and museums are adjusting their catalog records in order to address outdated, exclusive, and offensive languages. So why are we doing it now? One of the things I like to point out is that words change over time. So I have a very, hopefully, not offensive example of that. This is from New England Farmer, and it is an advertisement for a dress shirt for farmers. And they describe it as being cheap, light, cool, convenient, tidy, good-looking, and tasty. And the first time I saw this, it kind of made me laugh. Who would ever call a shirt tasty? But as you can see from the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, one of the definitions is being in conformity to principles of good taste or elegant, as in tasty furniture or a tasty dress. So in 200 years, that word has changed. And even in the last 50 years, words have changed. And this is why we're kind of focusing on trying to get reparative description done to address these changes in language over the time. So as languages do not say the same, you can see on this slide, this is from Library of Congress's list of preferred and non-preferred terms for reparative description. We're seeing what is a preferred term rather than what is a non-preferred term. I will stress that on one of the lines on here, I did blur out the word. It wasn't something I was comfortable showing. If you do go to the website, the word is there. So I like to try to prepare people for what they will see. So you'll see in these catalog records, terms that we have seen in many records, such as Negro, Squaw, Indian, and slave, are no longer being used. These terms have changed over time. We don't feel comfortable with them anymore. They are offensive to some people, and they are just generally outdated. So I do like to say that when you're dealing with reparative language, it is a difficult topic, it is a difficult subject, and it can be very draining on you to try to do all of this reparative language. One example I have is when I first started this position, I knew I would encounter difficult topics, but nothing really prepared me for holding a document that was a bill of sale for an African-American man that was lumped in with cattle and swine. And it was very difficult to look through that, and one of the reasons why we are trying to do these changes. So what is reparative description not? It is not political, it is not woke, it is not, it's inclusive. We want to be respectful of a person's preferences. We want to rehumanize an individual and a group of people, and we want to allow researchers to know what they're encountering when they see our collections. It is not censorship. We are not removing the items from the collections. We are not redacting the information. It is there to be seen. It is there to be researched. We would like to give a warning and preparation for finding these difficult subjects. We do have a lot of students that use our website and come to our museum and see the object labels. So we want to be respectful and try to be aware of these topics. So reparative description is also not quick. This is not something that you can just switch words and be done with it. It takes time and it takes reflection. It is also not one and done. Excuse me. It's not something that you just change the terminology and consider it complete. As we have seen, words change over time. And in another 10, 15, 20 years, the words that we're currently using may have different meaning, and we might want to adjust these things as well. One of the things that, if you notice on the previous slide, that they list a date added or updated. And that is something that they recommend doing when you have updated language or statements on your website, is to put a date on there so people know that they are being looked at, they're being revised, and when they were last revised. So some changes being made. This is the Library of Congress website, obviously, the subject headings authorities. And this is the key word search for Native Americans, and they are using Indians of North America still. This can be problematic because a lot of times the words Indian has been used as a bit of a slur or a derogatory or negative term. And also because it's too broad. If you are ever going to travel in Europe and they said, where are you from? You're never going to say North America. You're going to say America, the United States. If someone is more local and they're asking you that, you're going to say your town or your state or your address in order to describe who you are and where you're coming from. Having that North America is huge and does not even begin to identify where someone is coming from. So as you can see on a more broader or a more narrower search, Library of Congress is starting to break down the different areas that are in Indians of North America. These are some great terms. They are still very regional, so you kind of need to know who is in your collection, who is in your region, who your communities are to help narrow it down. They might not be on Library of Congress yet, but you can start seeing some of those breakdowns. So you're not just lumping everyone into this gigantic term of North America. We also talk a lot about the difference between Native American and Indigenous. And Indigenous can be used for any location around the world for whoever was native in that area. Obviously, Native American is going to be specific for the country of North America. One of the problems with using Native American is it is bringing up those terms of colonization. America was named because of a European explorer. So Indigenous tends to be used a lot more because you're taking that colonization away from the term. And the reason I stress knowing your community is that in Connecticut alone, there are 2 federally recognized and 3 state recognized tribal nations. But there are over 15 different Indigenous groups that are in the state. So these groups have fought, they have merged, they have been removed from the state. So knowing who they are, where they are located, what their history is a really big benefit to knowing and being able to catalog more respectively. So here at Connecticut Museum, we have created a statement on harmful language in collections and description. This is an abridged version. This is just a shorter version that we have on the main website on our research page. And it states that we value research and open access to the collection, but we understand that some materials are outdated, harmful, violent, and discriminatory. We then have a site underneath it that is a button that you can click to our full statement, which I have to say went live this weekend. So at the end, I do have a clip so you can see the larger statement. One of the other things we are doing is adding a form to that with name, contact information, what you have found in our collection that you feel is offensive and might need to be addressed, and how to contact us about that. As well as, a site, are we allowed to contact you with more questions? We also stress in that statement that this is not something that will happen every night. And if you email us on a Friday night at 5:30, it will not be fixed for Monday morning. It is something that we take very seriously. We discuss it, we meet on it, not just Andrea Sierra and I, but we are meeting with other people in the institution as well. So what we're also doing is we are putting statements on our finding aids and our catalog records. So here are a few examples. Our update statement is basically saying language in this catalog has been reviewed, revised, and updated on, and then we are issuing that date that we have done it. And in addition to that, we are also having content warnings. And this is more just to give that heads up that you might be encountering things in our collection that might be of concern. If you're working with a student that might not want to see these things, or you're not comfortable with the topic, this at least gives you that warning. So the 2 here are for violence and sexual assault and offensive and inappropriate language for Indigenous people. We also have statements for racism, slavery, disability, and suicide as well. So our American Revolution Papers digitization project. I'm hoping to be able to say that by the end of this project. So we're trying to decide where to start. Andrea and Sarah have been working on this on reparative language before, but we thought with this American Revolution project, it is a little bit more contained. We have about 350 collections that we are working with. And it's got a set time frame, and we have a team working on this project. So we can dedicate a little bit more time than my colleagues can, who are also being pulled into a million other directions. So this project focuses about 1750 to 1805. However, because we need to see that cause and effect of the time period, we are going before and after that time period. And part of that is indigenous documents between Europeans, including land deeds and communications. And it's a fascinating topic, but again, we're starting to see terminology in there that we might not want to have posted on our records. So our workflow, we get a lot of comments on the workflow, and it is not a linear task. We are going, I feel sometimes we are going in like crazy directions all over the place trying to figure all of this out. But where we have started is finding the records first. So for this project, we have a special tracking sheet that has the manuscript numbers, the dates, the titles, and anything about the project or the manuscripts that we think should be in this project. So we're able to keyword search a lot of those terms that we're looking for to find them in those. We also are using our website catalog, our card catalog, and word of mouth. Our staff and our researchers are essential for finding language that needs to be updated. So you can see, so I've circled reparative description in this spreadsheet, and that is because I have a drop-down screen that says, yes, it needs reparative description. No, it does not need reparative description. I don't know if it needs a reparative description or the reparative description has been completed. And this is really wonderful to help us track what has been done, what still needs to be done. And it also helps for our statistics at the end of the month that I submit. So another part of reparative description workflow is decision-making. So how do we know what to change and what to change it to? So one of the most difficult parts is knowing what to change. Some words, like I mentioned earlier, are no-brainers. That's perfectly easy. We know this word is not acceptable anymore. We're changing it to this word. But there's others we're trying to figure out how to know what to change or what to change it to. So one of the big things is knowing your community. Who are you talking about in your community? And then finding reputable resources that are going to have already addressed that issue. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is a great field to be in. We are very open, we are very honest, and we are more than happy to talk about it. So if you are with a similar museum that might have similar collections, reach out to people and have this discussion. And what are you using and where did you find this information? But check sources, recheck sources, make sure you're getting the most valid sources that you can find. So obviously Society of American Archivists, National Archives, American Ancestors are great resources for that. American Ancestors, it has a 10 million names program that they're doing now, and they offer a free webinar series on tracing your African American roots. And that has some really good resources on how to start tracking names. So in addition to our big tracking sheet that has everything on it, we've created this smaller, more attainable tracking sheet specifically for reparative description. So this is showing us what platform it's on. Is it in a finding aid? Is it on our library catalog records? Is it in the card catalog? The date we found it, who's addressing the issue, and then all of the information about the collection. We are also putting in there what should be changed or it has been changed and what it is being changed to, as well as any resources or content sources that we might feel is relevant. So this is a way of creating a great transparency. If someone says, I noticed you changed your catalog record, is there a reason why? Can you explain why you chose that word instead of the word that was already there? This is going to be a quick reference. This was actually shared, this is modified from a shared resource from University of Texas, Arlington. So I thank you to them. And Andrea and Sierra have also been working on using that website for other collections in addition to this project. So a few examples I wanted to show is this is one of our original catalog records for a manumission document. And it's fine. It shows what it is. It shows the date. It shows a subject. But the description is frees Black slave Bristow for payment of 60 pounds money, which is what it is. However, we decided we wanted to take the focus off Thomas Hart Hooker, who is who it's by, and put it more on the person that has been freed. So this is the current record that has been updated, and we have put Bristow's name into the title. We also have some historical data in that. So the scope and content is explaining that he was given his liberty and freedom by Thomas Hart Hooker, but it was also for money. Thomas Hart Hooker was not just giving him his freedom, he was well paid for it. But we also have information about Bristow. We found information on him. He was an enslaved African man at about the time of this document. He was around 44 years old. It talks about how Hooker could not manumit him until Bristow was able to care for himself. But then we also found information in Bristow's will, and he was never married, never had children that we could find, but he left all of his estate to the children of Thomas Hart Hooker. So while he probably had a very good relationship with this family, judging that he left everything to the children, he was still an enslaved man. So on the spot that I have circled here, you can see we have a general note that language in the catalog record has been reviewed and revised and updated in May of 2024. But there is also a content warning that it contains details of the inhumane treatment of enslaved people. Although the document does not specifically talk about any abuse or any, inhumane treatment, we firmly believe that any person that has been held in captivity and enslaved, it's an inhumane treatment. So we are putting that content warning on anything that relates to slavery. So another example I have is the Prince Pitkin papers. This talks about 2 promissory notes and a probate record for Prince Timbo and Cash Africa, who served in the Revolutionary War. There's not a lot of information on here. It mentions African Americans in East Hartford. It mentions United States History Revolution, but nothing about who these people were. So our new updated record, it has not gone live yet, so I just have what I am going to be putting into it. We've broken down the documents, and in doing that, we found it was not Prince Timbo, it was Prince Simbo, and it was actually 2 men named Prince. So this collection of 4 documents was actually 3 people instead of just the 2. So we actually were able to track down information on each of these men. So we have a little bit of biographical sketch in there. So it's more rehumanizing them. They were not just enslaved men. They were not just freed for serving in the Continental Army. These were men that actually existed, that had lives. Another thing I just want to highlight is anti-DEI laws in the United States. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is the full term for that. And it is an organizational framework which seeks to promote the fair treatment and full participation of all people, particularly groups who have been historically underrepresented. And this is a map from Best Colleges. And it is an updated map. I think it was from March of 2024. And this one is an interesting one because basically it says, if you see the dark pink highlighted that says signed into law, those are 10 states that have already passed laws prohibiting government agencies and/or colleges and universities from promoting or maintaining DEI programs. reparative description can be considered part of one of those programs. So I always stress, try to find out what is happening in your community, what is happening in your state, in your counties, in your countries. The light pink images that you're seeing on the map are bills that have been introduced. The navy blue ones are ones where there have no bills have been introduced as of yet. So our next steps. We are currently trying to come up with a taxonomy for our collection. This is something that there are taxonomies and listings like Library of Congress and lots of different museums that are what terms they are no longer using and what terms they are using instead. Because every collection is different, it's something that you kind of really have to personalize yourself. So we are working on that taxonomy. One of the other things we have done was the maturity model. And this was created by Stephanie Luke and Sharon Mazzotta, and it's a good evaluation for where your collection currently stands. It's a great setup where they have a different topic for each section, and it's no, my museum is not even thinking about this topic, or yes, we have completed that topic. And it's kind of like a way to try to place what things need to be worked on and addressed. Unfortunately, this is part of an Archival science journal, which is behind a paywall at this moment. So hopefully if you can get a chance, there is a GitHub link as well that you can get more information on. So we actually did this for our museum. The goal is to then redo it again at the end of this project to see how far we've come in another 3 years. And then our website's statement and form, we are continuing to work on. Again, I mentioned that it went live this morning. I will show you a link of the original one. The form is not up yet. We are also continuing to enhance our workflow, make it so it's just part of our system, so it's a little bit easier to address. And we're going to keep discussing. Andrea Sierra and I are meeting every other week. We are meeting with additional people on the AMREV project, and we are talking to other people in the museum. We are talking to other museums, trying to get a better idea of what everyone else is doing. So I'm hoping I can link this. We'll see. Can everyone see this statement? Yeah, okay, great. So this actually just went live recently. I found out about it this morning, which is why it was not in my presentation, but I did want to share the brief abridged version I showed you takes you to this page. And it is a much longer explaining what we are doing and why we are doing. And we want to thank all of the other organizations that are helping out and we are taking information from. And it also has a description on what we mean by harmful language and why it is important. So now I have to see if I can get back to where I was. And my thing is going slowly. Oh boy, it's not taking me back. Okay, well, that was my last slide anyway, so I just wanted to share that. I will do a stop share here and see if anyone has any questions. I just want to thank my team here who are amazing, and thank the organization as well, because everyone has been so supportive of this and so interested in what we're doing. I really stress to everyone that to reach out to other people. I think we're all feeling a little bit in the same boat of, am I doing the right thing? I am a white straight woman, so what right do I have to decide what other people should be called? Which is why I like to say, get involved with your community, talk to people. If you are going to have programs on your organization to come in and discuss things, we also stress you want to compensate people for their time if they're going to come in to work with you. That does not always mean financial contribution. Ask questions. Ask what people want to be called, and don't be offended if they say you've done it wrong. Just figure out how to fix things. One of the other things we talk about with, which I didn't mention, with the Indians versus Native Americans versus Indigenous, is not everyone within those communities will agree as well. So just do your best to work with who you know, and that was all. Oh, you're muted.
I mute myself. That was fabulous, Amy. Thank you so much. You covered so much amazing information, and your ending leads into one of our questions.
Okay,
So
great.
Linda wants to know, because most archival description is now available online, the community of users, readers is much bigger than it used to be. Have you discussed what you will do in the event that one community's preferred term is identified by another as offensive?
That's tricky. I think we've dealt with that. We actually had a group come in to the museum a few years ago. I was not here for that. And within a group of 3 on the panel, they did not agree on what terms to be using. I don't have a clear answer for that. I think it's just best if you're working with one community and there's 2 different people listed on there, you could mention both within. I've always used, if you have a term that you feel is offensive, or if you've been told that is offensive, however you need to include it, whether it's a title or a former name of an institution, put things in quotes so that people know that is something that is addressed. I apologize, that's not a great answer for that. But I think just talking to the community, why does one community member feel it's offensive and why does the other one not? It might be a great topic for that community to discuss within themselves as well.
Wonderful. Another one kind of on a similar topic. How do you handle offensive or harmful geographical names such as rivers, mountains, etc.?
That kind of goes on the same note as well, of putting things in quotes, or at least having a content warning. If it is a geographical location, there's not much you can do to change that name, unless that is something that is being worked on with the town, of possibly having it permanently changed. But putting things in quotes, or like the full title into quotes, and having a statement on there saying, we understand that this is an outdated term. However, this is the current title that is being used.
Great. Laura would like to know, as part of your efforts to be transparent, do you ever acknowledge your community partners in this project or the person who pointed out the offensive term? And if so, where do you do that?
So we have not done that as of yet. We have, our CEO is working with certain communities in the Indigenous population. We have not personally worked with them yet. Right now we are using resources that we have found. Kathy has shared one, what terms to be using for the state and federally recognized tribal nations. So we are using those as best as we can. Again, because they have merged or separated or been removed from the state since these documents that I'm dealing with were created, I'm doing the best I can to try to, if it was part of a Mohican tribe, but is now Pequot, I'm trying to reference both in subject headings. So just trying to talk to people, but we haven't personally done it. Someone that calls and says, I don't like this offensive term, I wouldn't address their name and post their name. But as we start working with communities more and more, it's not an overnight process. So I feel like I'm hoping to have a good handle on this by the end of my 3 years here. So it takes time.
Terrific. Laura was asking, what is taxonomy? Can you explain to people about that?
Yeah, it's really just a listing of what you're going to be using. So kind of like a dictionary or a glossary, similar to the slide that I had showed earlier of the Library of Congress, where it had a listing of preferred terms and then the outdated terms. Using a taxonomy just as a guiding point for staff members. So we've got multiple people that are doing catalogs. We're working on the American Revolution papers, but there's other projects happening that will be using reparative language or are reusing reparative language already. So having like some one listing that everyone can refer to, so we're using the same terms throughout the museum.
Terrific. Kathy was asking, what are you adding to OCLC? Can you talk a little bit about what the records of which items might be added?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. So the two examples that I showed, that's OCLC. So it's updating our personal catalog records that then get transferred over to Bibliovation. So we're not specifically changing anything in OCLC as a whole, but just in our personal records. So I hope that clears that up.
I think that does. Avianca had a question that I'm sure you're really becoming an expert in, and that is the famous letter F that is used in the script writing of the 18th century for the letter S.
Oh, yes.
And so she's referring to that first slide you showed with the two documents. So do you have any more information about when and when not that F is used when you're reading cursive?
So it's usually used in a document, and it really isn't anything for reparative language or description. It was just their formal way of writing that. Whenever I transcribe it or I'm talking about the document, I use the double S instead. I don't use the F and the S. So it's just one of those terms, you know, I have researched it and I do not know all of the details and why they were doing that. But it is not meant to be, it's nothing offensive. It's just the way that they were writing the words.
I figured someone who's been reading a lot of 18th century
Yes.
has run into a lot of those descended S's that look like F.
Definitely.
So
Most definitely. And the other thing is, when you're dealing with older documents like this, and probably even more modern documents, is you're not getting all of the details. So you might have an enslaved person, you don't know if they are Black from Africa, Black from Barbados, Black, so trying to find and rehumanize and give more specifics to their life is really difficult if there's a first name and no other information. Also, when people have been manumitted, they often will change their names. They don't want to have their enslaver's last name, so they'll take on a new name. So tracking people and trying to find information about them is really, really difficult.
I actually have a question. When you're doing that and you're locating these names, like that one document where you went from 2 men to 3 men were identified on those documents, and you had a little biographical piece on each one, is that part of the project? Are you making time to try to do bio descriptions of these people who, as you mentioned, are often not highlighted in any finding aids?
Definitely part of the project. It's not just the names that have previously not been seen before. We are doing it for everyone that we're finding in the collection as well. It's just we're spending a lot more time on the names that weren't as common. It's easy to find information on Oliver Wolcott. It's easy to find stuff on Jeremiah Wadsworth. Blanking on the last name. George Washington, all of the big names.
The
It's the name,
Trumbolls and all of them.
the
Yep.
Trumbolls, exactly. It's the names of, this person was freed by this person. So you're then looking at the enslavers documents to try to find any names, any dates, any information on these people. So it is very time consuming. We also have that spot where, like, when do you stop? There's times that you're looking up something and you're like, okay, I'm not finding anything, but I know the next thing I search, I'm gonna find it. So you kind of have to just trust your gut, and when you just say, okay, there is no information on this person. One interesting thing is, in my project with the American Revolution papers, is military documents. So enlistment documents where you're finding a person's name that has enlisted. We found documents that are saying that, this enslaved person was freed in exchange for enlisting in the Continental Army. So it's those little tiny bits that you're finding that just kind of will lead you on that, path. But there are times I've spent 2 days searching for one person's name, and I finally have to just say, I can't anymore. I'm doing everything I can. Hopefully I can look back and in a couple weeks and find them. But if not, you kind of just have to step back.
And I'm sure you've also, in going through so many records, I think what all of us working in archives love is that aha moment where you've been in one collection and then you realize it's also referenced in another collection, and all of a sudden these papers that seem not to have any relationship connect in ways you
They
weren't
do.
expecting to find. So
Exactly. We also noticed that names were spelled phonetically and how they were pronounced. So my cataloger, John, who has been working on a couple of documents, I had one document that was listed as Jordan Freeman, and I had information on him. He came across same location, same date, same everything, but the name was spelled Gurden. But if someone says a name out loud and says, "Oh, I'm Jordan," someone's just going to spell it how it sounds.
right,
So while we can't guarantee it's the same person, there's a very good chance that this is the same person with this name spelled differently.
that's great. Just to make your life a little easier, Linda Hocking has said that if you haven't already found it, Litchfield Historical Society has lots of information on Cache Africa. So
Yes,
you can
I've
add
already
that to
found
your
it.
information. Okay. And Laura is asking another question. She says here, I'm guessing you will track the messages you receive from the contact form as well?
Exactly. So the form isn't live yet, so we're not really sure how we're going to do it, if it's going to be just an Excel document that's shared in-house, or if there's going to be another system. So, but generally, like I always say, we're all in different spots. We might not all have the same resources as everyone else. We're lucky enough that we have a great staff and advancement department that can work on the website. That we have a team that is working specifically on this project, that we have Excel in our systems, that we have, Microsoft Word, but Google Sheets works, a pad of paper works, anything that you're doing that you can then reference back to and track.
Terrific. Well, Amy, thank you again for such a great presentation on the work that you're doing at up in Hartford at the museum. You've done such a great overview of the work. I'm so appreciative. We had great questions from everyone. Lizette, if you could put up the final slide. If anyone has any other questions, you can email them. You can always go to the Google Classroom and post them.
I have a list of resources and the slides that are in Google Classroom already.
Thank you so much. If you're going to be looking for a recording of this or last week's webinars, they are on the Conservation Connection website.
All right,
Bianca
I'm
is
having a
wondering how we can
problem
reach
here.
you. Oh, you are? All right, let me see if I can't get it up. Okay,
Oh,
hold on. Hold on, we'll get it up. I just want to finish a couple more things. Evaluations will be emailed to you this week. And our final program will be next Monday, also at 10 a.m. Eastern, November 4th, with Sarah Morin, who will be talking about court records in the Connecticut State Archive that they've been processing. Very similar work to what was done by Amy, but really working with state papers this time. And I'm going to put up for all of you. Okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.
Yeah, they're asking about reaching Amy. Amy, can you put your contact information in there?
Already done. I had it on my last slide, but I wasn't able to get back to my slides. So
Okay.
it is A. Hietala, my last name, at connecticutmuseum.org. It is up on the website or as well under our staff section.
Just gonna leave it like that.
Mhm. Well, thank you, Amy. That was very interesting and informative. So really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.